All right, hello, I'm back. I'm assuming that you guys can hear me. I'm sorry about that little kerfuffle before. We should be live now. It should be okay for a while. I'm at the sock, just waiting for it to the chat to catch up, or the live broadcast to catch up, to make sure we are in fact there. Yeah, all right.
Okay, it seems like I got you now.
You got me now? Okay.
No sound again, but that must just be me.
Yeah, okay. People, apparently people can hear me. We should just check. Anybody out there, can you hear me? Hello? Hello?
Yeah, it seems like it's working now.
All right. It's just for some reason your computer's not hearing me.
Yeah, I don't know why. It's really weird.
Weird. All right. Anyway, what were we talking about? Oh, yeah. We're talking about what went on this past week. The reason I'm doing the show differently this week and doing it here from the basement and not doing it from Pigeon Row, which normally hosts us, and the reason we don't have the whole gang here is because the topics we're going to talk about tonight have really made people very, very upset. And tonight, I wanted to be clear that the things I say represent my views. Nobody else, no one else here, my views. So I also don't want other people chiming in, possibly putting their foot in their mouth by accident, and then having everybody attack them online. I don't think they need that. I don't need that headache. All right. So here we are. We're live, and the chat is going. Lynn, are you able to see the chat?
I can see the chat, yeah.
Okay, are we getting any comments yet?
Yeah. Corey Hart, not the Corey Hart, wants to know, what kind of cigar do you smoke?
Screw that. I'm here to talk about serious things. You want what kind of cigar I smoke? I smoke whatever kind somebody gives me for free. How about that? Might be a bit dangerous, but that is the truth. All right. Corey Hart. Imagine going through life with that name. Unless you're actually Corey Hart.
He's allowed to wear sunglasses at night.
Yeah, for whatever good that does anybody. All right. Hang on a sec. I'm going to need this thing.
Okay.
Hold on, I'll be back in a minute. Sorry, guys, just trying to adjust something here that... All right, that's a little bit better. Sorry, guys. Tried this, tested this afternoon. Didn't do a complete test, I guess. All right, so here we are, and now let's concentrate on the events of the week. People keep asking, is Donald Trump racist? The truth is, it doesn't really matter whether he's racist or not. It doesn't matter what's actually in his head, if anything's in there at all. It doesn't matter what's in his heart, because I'm not too sure that that there's one in there either. What matters is the effect what he has to say is having on his country. And quite frankly, up here in Canada too, because now there's like white nationalist rallies being planned in the wake of Charlottesville in places here in Canada, including one supposedly in Toronto that they advertised was at the U of T, and then the U of T said, no, not happening here. Thanks. Like they need that service. All right. So the fact is that what Trump has been saying, his attempt to equate anti-Nazi protesters with Nazis, is obviously toxic. It allows these Nazis to feel like they have some validation and like that they have some place. They've been elevated on the scale of respectability because somehow now they're the same as people protesting against that kind of racism. Well, here's the thing. First of all, there's a false binary going on. The binary says that if you don't support the Nazis, then you support Antifa. It's like there's only two groups, the Nazis and Antifa. When the truth is that Antifa was only a small fringe part of the whole gathering there. Most of the gatherings that were there to protest the Nazis were in fact like church groups that showed up with candles and stuff like that. Not the Antifa people. So you don't, if you're anti-Nazi, it doesn't mean you're pro-Antifa. And that's what the right keeps trying to say, that everybody who supports, who is against the Nazis is pro-Antifa. And quite frankly, Antifa as an organization, I'm not too enamored of them. Their goals are in some cases similar to some of the alt-right, which is burn it all down. And you know what? That, I don't care if you're coming from the right or the left, burn it all down, not a great idea. All these people, for example, on the right, who think that here's Trump. He's going to break the entire system. He's going to make it completely different. You know what happens after a guy like Trump comes in and makes such instability? The next time, people are going to be clinging to that system that was there before. They're going to be treating it like the Holy Grail because they want some stability. So rather than looking at the problems, they're just going to clutch at what was there before because it was infinitely better than what's been there during the Trump years. So a guy like Trump doesn't actually change anything. He's an agent of change temporarily. He's just an agent of agitation. That eventually everything goes back to the way it was, and people are happier with the way that it was because it's not the way that it became. Because just destroying stuff isn't really a plan. How's the chat?
Somebody wants to know how you do you miss Newton Cable?
Shut the hell up.
Well, that's a valid question.
Do I miss? Yeah, I do.
You didn't state parameters at the beginning of this thing. You were too worried about your shot.
Well, people have to see my good side.
You have a good side? I'm cleaning up all this junk in the background while you're talking. Most people are just agreeing with you.
Oh, is that all? All right.
But agreement is kind of boring for you, so I asked the...
I'll be back in 1 second. I'm going... Hang on. I'm listening, though. I'm listening.
You didn't say that people could only ask specific questions. So people are asking questions, and you're like, what the hell?
Okay, here's the thing. I'm back now. Here's the thing. Can you ask questions that are germane to what I am talking about at the moment? And then when we go to the general questions section, I'll take general questions.
Okay, but you have to tell them that in advance. Otherwise, people are just going to ask the questions they want to ask.
All right.
That's the whole point of this format, is people can ask what they want to know.
And apparently the things they want to know are kind of inane. So do I miss Newton Cable? Yeah, in some ways I miss Newton Cable. What I don't miss is working for free at Newton Cable. Because that was cable access. I don't miss having to use cardboard boxes, though, well, yeah, kind of back at it again. Newton Cable, for those who don't know, is the cable station in Toronto where I got my start. It was a tiny little postage stamp of a station, served only 12,500 homes in North York, and it was basically YouTube before there was YouTube. All the programs there were kind of zany. The hosts, even when it was like a straight subject like health, the hosts were kind of nuts. So it was all the kind of stuff you look for on YouTube now, unpredictable and kind of cheap. That was it then. It was 30 years ahead of its time. You know what happens when you're 30 years ahead of your time and 30 years later comes? Nothing. Everyone thinks now that you're old hat because you're doing what you always did and other people are trying to copy it. The Weird Al Yankovic showed that that's not true because people said, hey, everybody's doing parodies of videos on the internet. Who needs Weird Al? Then Weird Al comes out with his videos and winds up with his most successful album ever. So it just goes to show that there may be many acolytes, but there are very few masters.
DS wants to know, do you miss Master T?
Yes, I miss Master T. I miss Master T. I miss Rick. I miss Bradford. I miss Bill. I miss Amanda. What?
You still see Rick.
Doesn't mean I can't miss him. I see Rick. I see Rick once every 3 years. I miss all of them. Well, to be honest, there's a couple of people I worked with that I don't hate them, but I don't miss them. But I'm not going to tell you who they are.
That was last week's show.
I don't really think. No, I'm not talking about that asshole Evie Lewis. That guy I never worked with him.
Am I allowed to ask questions?
Yeah, what?
Adam asked, do you miss the pig and whistle?
The pig and whistle? Holy shit, did I hate the pig and whistle. For those of you old enough to remember, the pig and whistle was this show, I think it was on CBC, with the Irish Rovers, and it was set in like a pub, and they all sang like Irish pub songs. And when you're a kid, there is nothing worse than sitting watching a bunch of drunk white people singing a bunch of pub songs. It was like the worst thing ever. And like every minute of it was torture. It was like what they play in Tartarus, the pig and whistle. You can look at it. I don't even know if there's any clips on YouTube of the frickin' pig and whistle. But if you do, don't look at it because that's the abyss that will stare into you.
Okay, we got 2 or 3 questions at the same time about the Confederate statues. So I'll ask one of them that was the most general. Do you think all the Confederate statues should come down? Why or why not?
Well, yeah, I think the Confederate statues should come down. They should go in a museum or a junkyard because why are there statues? First of all, you don't put up statues to people who fought on the losing side of a war and were your enemy. The Confederates were the enemy of the United States. They lost. Why are there statues of these people up who led the slaughter of Union forces? Why is this even there? And you know what? They are a repudiation of modern times. Most of them were put up not after directly after the Civil War. They were put up in like the 60s when blacks were getting uppity. What?
Early 1900s during Jim Crow.
Oh, early 1900s during Jim Crow. Anyway, they were put up as sort of a totem, a monument to, hey, look, white people that we like. And it was a direct rebuke of the attempts by black people to get some rights to be human beings. These things, they're artifacts of another time. They symbolize for a lot of people a system that wanted to keep them enslaved. So you know what? They shouldn't be in public places unless there's a context on it that says, hey, here's a statue of some jackass who fought really hard to keep slavery and in the process killed lots of American soldiers. But then why would you have a statue? Where are the statues to the slaves is what I wonder. Why are there not statues in public places to the slaves who really gave the muscle to building the foundation of the United States? Why are there none of those statues? Why is it always statues of some asshole on a horse? All right. Any other questions?
One person asked, I don't know if you want to answer this, but wants to know if Trudeau not keeping his promises to Native Canadians, is that on par? And do you think that he gets enough criticism? Two separate questions there.
Trudeau not keeping his promises to Native people, is that on par with what? With the Confederate statues?
Yeah.
I'll be honest. I don't know exactly what it is he promised and that he hasn't come through with yet. So I can't answer that question.
Okay, how about the second part? Do you think that there's an appropriate amount of criticism of Trudeau?
I don't know if there's an appropriate amount of criticism. I think you're asking, is there an appropriate amount of criticism of Trudeau about what you're saying is his inactivity to help Indigenous people? I don't know, because I don't know what his inactivity comes to, so I don't know whether he's being criticized properly for it. Does that make sense? Here, I'm telling you something that most pundits won't, and I'm not a pundit. I don't know. I will look into it, though.
I don't know is an acceptable answer.
Is it?
Yeah.
You said that or they did?
I say that. I think it's better to say you don't know than just come up with something because you're on the intertubes.
All right.
Yeah. I have a question for you.
Yes, Leona.
What do you think the fair... Because you're a very outspoken sock.
Me?
Yeah. You may have known.
Haven't heard that before.
Yeah. What do you think are appropriate limits for free speech?
Appropriate limits for free speech. Well, this is interesting because there were people on my Twitter feed today debating whether Nazis should have free speech. And, well, you see, in Canada, we don't have the blanket free speech that there is in the U.S. And if you look at the U.S. and how free speech is being abused and used to hurt people, well, you can see why we have limits here. I think that free speech should be free unless you're saying things which will directly lead to pain and suffering, violence against other people, or you're telling lies which will endanger people. In those cases, those are actually offenses against people. And it's not just speech. You're directing people to do things which are illegal, or you're telling them things which will wind up hurting them. So there is a bit of buyer beware on the internet. But at the same time, I think that free speech does have to be balanced against the needs and the safety of society in general. You can't just go spouting off everything. However, do I think that neo-Nazis shouldn't have the right to spout to say some of their theories? I guess they should, because the theory and the argument is then you just find people to speak intelligently against them. However, some of their things where they're encouraging racial wars and defining blacks and Jews as Satan's children, that's only intended to foment violence. That's the only cause of that, or only intent of that. So that kind of stuff, no, I think that should be clamped down on.
You want another question?
Sure, another question.
Okay. Gabby asks, if the white nationalist rallies happen in Toronto, will you be going to protest?
I've thought about it. I don't know if I'll be going to protest because shit goes sideways. Maybe I'll go to protest. Hang on, I'm going to take a drink and then I'll come and answer you again. Once I find my drink. There's my drink. I placed it in a dumb spot.
You could have asked me to get it.
I know, but we're talking about slavery here, and I don't want to ask you to get my drink.
Is it still slavery if you tip?
No, it's not slavery if you tip. All right. If you're wondering, I was just drinking a little bit of lemon iced tea. And yes, the sweetened kind. I hate in the U.S. when you order iced tea and they say it's unsweet. It's not a word. Unsweet is not a word. It's non-sweetened. They say it's unsweet. It's like, what kind of ignorant? Oh yeah, you're in the service industry in the U.S. Never mind the question. All right. So here's the thing. Wait, what was the question?
Are you going to go protest if there are white supremacist rallies in Toronto?
All right.
White nationalist. I better get the question right.
White supremacist, white nationalist, tomato. Let me just talk to you a bit, and I'll bring in what happened in Charlottesville and Trump's statement about there being some parity or equal blame between the two sides. Okay. Had to gather my thoughts there for a second. All right. So here's the thing. In the goals of the white supremacists who gathered, they're the white nationalists. The goals were to protect a statue that was being torn down. That's ultimately what they were there for. They were there to intimidate. They were there to basically the goals of white nationalists is to the most benign version is to create states that are separate. So white people are one place, black people are another place, Jewish people are another place. Who knows how many subdivisions they want? But their goal, their ultimate goal that they're working towards is something that is contrary to the benefit of society that we're living in. The goals of the people who oppose them, the goals there are to oppose the people who want to tear down society and put in its place basically racially pure states. So as far as motives, there is no comparison between the motives of the white supremacists and the people who protest the white supremacists. However, when you talk about tactics, there is some similarity between the tactics employed by white nationalists and the tactics employed by specifically Antifa or maybe Black Lives Matter. I don't know specifically which of those groups showed up with intending to fight and kick Nazi ass, which I understand the motivation. But if your tactics are going to mirror the other side, the problem then is what's happening now, is that the media who is against the anti-racist stuff, the racist media, look and say, see, both sides are the problem. When you show up like the churches did, and you have flowers and you have candles, and the Nazis go and attack them, there's no ability for anybody to distort that. To say, look, it was both sides. One side had baseball bats and automatic weapons. The other, they brought candles. Like, there's just no ability for that to be screwed up and for a false, what is it again? A false equivalency to be established. If you really want to, like, here's the thing. You can't beat white nationalists at their own game because it's their game. They set the rules, and you're always going to be judged with them if you do the same things as they do. Now, if they come at you and start to beat up on you, you absolutely have the right to meet violence with violence. But honestly, we don't know who threw the first punch, and it doesn't really matter. I think it was probably the Nazis. But when you show up looking like you're spoiling for a fight and you get a fight, it makes it very difficult to to create a narrative where the right can't just claim that you're as bad and therefore stop focusing on the activities of the white nationalists. If the counter protesters hadn't engaged in any violence and they'd stuck with the flowers and candles, there wouldn't be any discussions about whether there's some kind of parity between the two sides. There would be only discussions about the barbarity of the white nationalists. And that's the kind of conversation you want to have. Does that answer Gabby's question?
I think so. Do you want another question?
Sure, another question.
It's got a preamble.
A preamble.
Yeah.
We the people.
Yeah. Johnny asks, "Hey Ed, longtime fan, first-time commenter, now in the media myself. Wondering how you think
poor sucker.
Wondering how you think the landscape has changed since the 90s, given the fact that the internet is a faster medium, not only for news, but comedy as well. What have you had to do to stay current, relevant, and ahead of the curve?"
Well, you can't stay ahead of the curve on the internet because you never know which way the curve is going. Yeah, you know what? The internet has made it possible for individuals to do what before you needed a lot of money and a license from the CRTC to do, which is broadcast. And in fact, individuals can use their phone to broadcast further than any Canadian station ever did back in the day. However, that doesn't mean that what's being broadcast is worth anybody watching. There is so much shit out there. People broadcast because they think they should, because their friends do, even though they got nothing to say. They don't try to organize their thoughts. They have no cogent opinions. They're just, "Hi, it's me again. I bought new shoes." There's so much shit out there. And it's hard to tell the wheat from the chaff because the chaff just overwhelms the wheat. So what do I think? I don't think that the internet has necessarily it's democratized communication. It sure hasn't made it any better. What it's done is shown why maybe when it wasn't democratized, it wasn't totally a bad thing because most people don't have anything to say worth listening to.
Good?
Yeah, good.
Keep going.
Next question.
Do you want another question on Aboriginal stuff, or would you rather move on?
I'm not an expert on Aboriginal stuff. I'll take the question, but if I don't know, I'll tell you.
Okay, it's an obscure point of law.
Oh, great. Then I'll probably know that obscure point of law.
Gladu rights are?
What?
Gladu rights?
Who writes?
Exactly. Let's move on.
Move on.
Okay, that's not a question.
Leanna's sifting through.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't want to just blow past the question, but I figured it was two inside baseball. A lot of people agreeing with you.
Anyone disagreeing? By the way, if you don't believe what I'm saying, that there is a more peaceful way to win this war, go to your internets and type in Derek Black renounces father or something like that. Because this is a story of a guy who was the son of a major white nationalist. Okay, his father, Don Black, had started the Stormer website. And a leading anti-Semite, anti-Black person, but in the modern guise, which is they just, rather than saying they're against anything, they say they're for white heritage. It's all code words. His son, Derek, was being held up as the heir apparent, as the next generation of the outspoken white nationalist movement. In fact, when he was a kid, he set up a white nationalist website for children. If you can imagine that. Coloring book. It's like, those little mazes, help somebody get through. It's like, help Johnny get through the maze to chase the black people out of the neighborhood. I don't know what it was.
Wait, it was a KKK coloring book?
Well, no, I'm joking about it being a coloring book, but it was a website.
I was going to say the robes are all right. What do you color?
Yeah, you wouldn't color a KKK website. Anyway, this guy was a raised virulently racist.
What's the guy's name again?
Derek Black. Derek, Derek. Anyway, he then went to university and didn't tell people what he stood for because he figured he didn't really, he was kind of keeping it quiet. And then he wound up interacting with students of different ethnicities and faiths. Now, there was this Orthodox Jewish kid who had his friends over every Friday for Sabbath dinner. His friends weren't Jewish, but they enjoyed the ritual of the Sabbath dinner, getting together, talking about the week, being thankful for what you have, laughing with people. And at one point, the Jewish guy said, maybe I'm going to invite Derek. And everyone's like, no, don't. If you invite him, I'm not coming. I don't want to be around that racist. Well, Derek was always alone, so the kid, he invited him. And eventually, Derek came to the Jewish Sabbath dinner, and a lot of people stopped coming. But you know what? Derek discovered that what he'd learned about Jews and other people was bullshit when he finally saw the kindness and decency that this Jewish person had offered him. And then more people started coming back to the dinner of various ethnicities, and they learned that basically, Derek was not irredeemable, even though he was, baked in with the racism. And eventually, Derek publicly renounced white nationalism, turned his back on his father. And what did it? The outstretched hand, not the club with a nail through it. So basically, what this says is one of the ways to fight white nationalism and racism is with chicken soup. This is an honest-to-God true story. Any other questions?
Nat wants to know your thoughts about what's been going on at the Rebel.
Oh, the Rebel. We'll get to that in a second. You notice, this is just important to note that the white nationalists were marching the night before the rally saying the Jews will not replace us. The Jews will not replace us. Well, earlier today, the Jews released a statement and said, we're not looking for any newer models of ignorant assholes. So don't worry, no one's looking to replace you. The Rebel, boy. The Rebel made its bones by basically, I would say, veiled race baiting and racism and not so veiled racism. Anyway, they based themselves as the Rebel, the outpost, the right-wing alternative. But their stuff was cuckoo. A lot of their stuff was crazy. That Faith Goldie they have working there, batshit. Ezra Levant, a lot of what he says, batshit. It started becoming more and more enamored of the far right as it became more popular in the U.S. Because, you know what, most of their donations come from the U.S., and they figured, hey, here's a pile of money we can get from people by putting out these stories. And then when it became clear that it was toxic and it was going to hurt them, all of a sudden people started abandoning ship. Brian Lilly went, Barbara Kay, John somebody or other. And then today, Ezra Levant revealed that he'd been blackmailed. And if you read the story, it's believable that the guy who claimed that he has, video that showed Ezra asking him to cover up where the donations go, that person was actually, in fact, blackmailing Ezra Levant. And Ezra Levant's an idiot because he kept blackmailing people. Are you all right?
Yeah, I think my dog needs to go out.
Oh, all right.
Can I let him out?
Yeah, go let your dog out.
Is this where I should disclose that I did an interview on the Rebel once?
Leanna did do an interview on the Rebel once. Did they ever air it?
They didn't take it behind the paywall, and at first I thought it was something just odd. Now I wonder if it was just too reasonable that Lauren Southern and I had a nice chat. And
Lauren Southern no longer at the Rebel.
No, she's not at the
She
Rebel.
left before all this. She was the one who saw it earlier.
Well, she left to go independent. I'm not sure why. But
all right, anyway, probably good reasons. All right. While Leanna goes to let the dog out, hang on a sec. I got to take a little break for 1 second. I can keep talking. Sorry, guys, that we got off a little late, but things seem to be moving along pretty well. You guys, your questions have started to become much more focused. All right, I'm back.
I have a question, actually, Ed.
Leanna has a question, yeah?
Do you think that the blackmail that Ezra Levant described was actually blackmail?
Do I think that when you come back, I'll answer you. Because I have questions for you.
You have questions for me?
About your question.
Oh, okay.
All right, here's the thing. Here's the thing about the divide between blacks and whites, especially in the U.S. The truth is that a black American has more in common with a white American than they do with a black African. And that's because skin color does not create commonality. Culture and experience do. Even though the black experience in America is different than the white experience, their influences, their pop culture, their music, and so on, they have more in common than they would with somebody from Africa who comes from a completely different culture. All right? What's going on?
A cat for you for Black Cat Appreciation Day.
Oh, here, I'll get out of the way. It's Black Cat Appreciation Day. Here's a black cat who's not appreciating being carried onto the camera.
I don't think. Which one are you? I don't think Zelda liked that.
All right.
That was Zelda.
Now, the only time there's commonality based on skin color is redheads. The commonality is that they can't stay out in the sun for very long. That's the only commonality based on skin color. Their opinions are as diverse as anybody else's. And the truth is that the thing that really binds people together as far as common experience is economic level. People who black middle class people have more in common with white middle class people than they do with black people in poverty. The same thing. White middle class people have more in common with black middle class people than they do with white people in poverty. The great equalizer is economics. And there comes a point in time when the only color that's relevant is the color of money. You think Kanye West or Jay-Z, you think they experience the kind of racism that somebody who's poor experiences? No, because what matters in America is how much money you got.
Oh, they experience a different kind of racism.
It's a different kind.
Of course, the gingers have no soul comments have started.
You know what?
Because you mentioned redheads.
Doesn't make any sense. Gingers have no soul.
It's a joke, but it's kind of not funny after a while. It's funny once. It's not funny 1,000 times.
All right. More questions.
More questions. There's a lot of kitty, so I think kitties are.
Oh, well, that's awesome. That really helps add to the depth of this conversation.
What do you think it'll take to invoke the 28th Amendment? Friend of the show, Anthony, is asking.
The 28th Amendment, which is to remove the president.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. What would it take? I don't know. Trump declaring nuclear war unilaterally, that would probably do it. Anything beneath that, probably not. Trump could probably take a machine gun and kill people like Kim Jong-un, and I don't think the Republicans would do very much because they're only concerned about their agenda. So I think that the 28th Amendment, it would only be invoked by Congress if Trump actually started a nuclear war or was seriously threatening to, not just on Twitter. Now, your question, Leanna.
Well, Jessica, before that, wants you to insult her.
Jessica wants me to. I know nothing about this, Jessica. Do not ask me to insult you without giving me some grist for the mill, okay? Don't be an idiot.
And there you insulted her.
I know. I know.
So you had a question for me about my question.
Your question is what Ezra Levant was facing really blackmail?
Yeah.
Well,
because he says it's not true.
He says it's not true.
He says it's all lies. He says it's not true. So
yeah, anytime somebody is threatening to release something that will be damaging to you, whether it's true or not, it's blackmail. He's saying it isn't true, but he knows that the way the media works these days, it doesn't matter if it's true. There'll be people who want to believe it, and that's the narrative that'll stick. He should know because he engages in that every single day with his channel and his videos.
So you think it is?
I think it was still blackmail.
Okay. Should I keep asking you questions?
Yeah, sure. Keep asking me questions.
All right. So what's your biggest issue in Canadian politics right now? Shifting away from the U.S. a little bit because there's a lot of Canadian viewers here.
My biggest issue in Canadian politics. Geez, are there politics in Canada still? Our coverage seems to be mostly about America. Does
that bother you? That bothers me.
It bothers you that most of our coverage is about America?
Well, yeah, because there have been major things that have happened in Canada in the ensuing time period, and it's gotten almost no coverage.
Like what?
Well, like what happened in BC.
What happened in BC?
Exactly my point. The no confidence vote in the government.
Oh, the government. Yeah, that thing happened over there. There was something with the government in BC. You hear what Trump said today on his tweet? Like, that's just the way that it goes. Canadians tend not to be all that interested in Canada, which is unfortunate. And right now, it's hard to look away from a car crash like what's happening in the U.S.
Well, I mean, we've got refugees coming over the border.
Well, there are I am concerned about the number of refugees that are coming over the border. I'm concerned because, some of them may not be actual refugees. They may not qualify as refugees. We have to take them in anyway and process them and discover whether they do or do not belong. We can't just turn them back at the border because what are you going to do, shoot at them? I don't want that to be happening. I'm concerned about the number of refugees. I'm concerned about the deficit, but the economy does seem to be growing, so it's possible that some of those debt reduction targets can eventually be met. Who the hell knows? I don't like the number of people who say that Trudeau is as bad as Trump. Look, if you don't like Trudeau, that's fine. There's legitimate reasons based on certain political persuasions not to like the guy. That's fine. But to say that he's as bad as Trump, no, don't. There's another false equivalency. If you think Trudeau's bad in his own way. He's nowhere near what Trump has done to the United States. He's nowhere near the idiot that Trump is.
Jeff wants to know, will you ever have another TV show?
Will I ever have another TV show? Unlikely, because Canadian TV is mostly dead. And unlike in the States where they know that there's value in shows and characters that people really love. I mean, look at all the shows that came back. Full House, Roseanne's coming back, Will and Grace coming back, X-Files is back and going to be back again. There's so many of these things, Twin Peaks. In the States, they recognize, hey, that investment's already been made, and we can just jump on for the ride. In Canada, see, the thing is, in the U.S., making television is a business. In Canada, it's the cost of doing business. Canadian TV networks only make Canadian TV shows because they have to. If they were told tomorrow they don't have to make Canadian TV shows and they can continue to run American shows, see you later. Even E-Talk would be gone. Ben Mulrooney would be on a bread line. That would never happen. So I don't see that Canadian TV sees the value. I've been told that my brand is too strong. In a populist media, how can your brand be too strong? Only in Canada. I was told by the Comedy Network once that because I was on Much Music, they don't know how to rebrand me for comedy. I guess it must have been all those in-depth biological medical specials I did on Much Music. It made it hard for them to figure out how to put me on a comedy network. I'd rather somebody tell me to just fuck off than give me a bullshit excuse.
You were the Sanjay Gupta of Much Music?
I was the Sanjay Gupta of Much Music.
All right. What kinds of questions do you want now, Ed?
Well, you know what? I'm not sure. First of all, I want to know, how do people, did the people like this format?
Seems to be a decent number of people watching.
Yeah?
Yeah.
All right. Well, maybe we'll do it again a couple of times. I don't want to stop. I miss the crew. I miss Nick and Lonnie and Anthony and Giada and Raya. Yeah, Romper Room. I miss everybody at at the Pigeon Row headquarters where we broadcast. But again, today I did it this way because talking about controversial issues that has people melting down this week, I want everyone to know that this is my opinion, the opinion of nobody else but me. No one encouraged these opinions. No one else takes responsibility or should be given responsibility for these opinions. And so I didn't want there to be confusion by having lots of extra bodies around. But that being said, I'm tired.
Yeah, you've been going for a while. This is decent.
Yeah, I think I'm going to say goodbye for now. But please, this will be up on YouTube. Watch it, share it. Please comment. Nobody comments because I know most of my audience is used to just watching something, liking it, and moving on. But also subscribe to the channel, please. Click the little subscribe to the channel. And I would ask you to give to Patreon, but my voice is running out.
It's Ed the Sock or FUnetwork.tv on Patreon.
Patreon.com/Ed the Sock Live.
There you go.
All right. Help us out money-wise. All right. Leanna, thank you very much. This was not easy on you. Never is, technically.
I think I broke your little stool. I stepped on it to let the dogs out, and the legs are all bent now.
No, didn't you see? No, I broke it earlier.
Oh, you broke it?
I broke it.
You broke it with your Herculean strength?
I broke it earlier.
Look, Ed broke the thing. I don't know if people can see it. Like this.
Here, I'll get out of the way.
This is the right side, and now this side. The tray be hurting. Can you bend it back into place?
It'll probably break.
It's gonna snap off if I try to bend it back. Okay, yeah, no, not happening.
You should see Leanna trying to. It's very funny. The Iron Man.
Me with my hands that don't.
Yeah, her hands barely work, and she's trying to move metal. It's gonna break.
Oh, it's actually working.
Oh, it's working.
Yeah, it's
all right, it's fascinating.
It's like braces. You just got to do a little at a time.
All right. So thank you all very much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week around 8:30. We're trying to get timely. Just that's why we need you to give to Patreon so we can get money for better, more reliable equipment. Because Leanna is every week pulling together miracles with spit and duct tape. Spit? Well, not really. It's a phrase, spit. She doesn't actually spit. She's not a camel.
I want to be a camel now.
She wants to be a camel. All right, we'll leave with that. I'm Ed the Sock. I'm nobody's puppet. Don't you be either. Aloha. Oh, by the way, thanks to Stage 10 for helping us with broadcasting tonight. We had a fix there. She fixed the tray. I wouldn't take the tray.